This is something that sprung from last year. And I'm going to bet that like 80% of the customers out there forgot about this when they signed up for NCE last year. Here with Jason Lane, Principal Microsoft Consultant at MicroAge. And I was actually looking at last year's podcast when you and myself and Avery Schaller got together and we talked about this. And we started off with the same conversation. We started off with the same question, which tells you that Microsoft is just like this evolving thing, right? They're always introducing changes. They're always introducing new things to the partner community and the customer community. And then the customer community is like, huh? And then the partner community, the best of the best know how to translate those changes into languages that, customers understand, Microsoft customers understand. And usually the thing that's been coming up, especially since 2022 with NCE season, are price changes.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a ton. Before that, there was like 10 years of nothing. And now there's like 4 years of a lot, 3 or 4 years of a lot. So the first one, and this is something that sprung from last year. And I'm going to bet that like 80% of the customers out there forgot about this. When they signed up for NCE last year, they signed up for a year. And by doing that, right, they were able to avoid a 5% price increase on their subscriptions by leveraging certain products. And, I'll let you dive deeper. That goes away when their subscription comes up for renewal in 2026. And I'll stop talking here in a minute, but there's a huge percentage of customers out there that renew their subscriptions in Q1, right? Q1 of 2026, January, February, March timeframe. So a lot of stuff is going to be happening there. We're going to make our best effort to talk to these customers and clients and say, hey, remember? Because I think from a budgeting standpoint, maybe they didn't think it over. And there's a lot of customers out there that are working with other partners that may have no awareness to this all. So if you could take everything I just said, summarize it into, what you would want to explain to a client to say, this is what we mean by the 5% increase. These are the rules you need to play by.
Yeah, no, that's great, Rick. And the one constant that we know about Microsoft is change is inevitable. And it's every time, and it's almost daily with Microsoft. There's something changes with the program or there's changing with licensing. What we do our best effort, and we had discussions with our clients last year, whether it's known or not, and they remember is, hey, there's this upcoming price change when you're looking at your annual commit paid monthly licenses, where Microsoft is adding a premium to that going forward. So it's worth considering, from a budgetary standpoint, as well as when that next renewal date comes up, whether it's January, February, March, or any other time throughout the year, that if we move forward with the annual commit paid monthly, then there's going to be that 5% premium versus doing an annual prepaid agreement. And that's across all partners. So it's not just us that are affected by it, rather than looking at all partners. And then now it's worth talking about, hey, is the licensing that you have today the right license? Is there other options that we're looking at for optimization? But more importantly, there's something out there that I'm not getting? We find a lot of clients that we work with where they'll go with business premium or they'll go to E5 for a specific feature, that we really just want to take the time and understand what they're looking for objectives wise, but also what they may not know that comes with that. And part of it is the increasing things that Microsoft has done around Purview, era of AI, right? And we talk about it all the time. So now how do you govern not only Copilot 365, but also when you look at your other AI platforms, and are you really managing those for users? And is there concerns around risk and things like that Microsoft has now incorporated using Purview for a better governance platform? Because we're taking into account, not only price increases, but what's the objectives for future initiatives and how does that play a factor? And then where do you need the help and support that we have the flexibility to come in with the resources that you need?
Yeah. So let's stay on Purview for a little bit, because you're right. I'm hearing it too. And then I have a question for you about Teams. But when we get in touch with customers we haven't met before, or even clients that we have, and they're talking to whoever out there, or they're reading it somewhere, the message they're getting is, oh, you should upgrade to E5. Well, you should upgrade to E5. And the question is, do they have to upgrade E5 in order to leverage the full benefit of Purview? What can they get without going to E5? Like, what? How do they play with that so they can get the governance they're looking for without the massive expense increase in cost?
No, that's a huge point, and that's also why Microsoft comes up with like these add-ons, right? So think of even with Purview. So everybody's familiar with like Enter ID. You have your free plan, you have your premium plan 1, then you have your plan 2, which all have additional benefits when you're looking at that. It's the same type of consideration with Purview. So what you do is you lock more benefits around what you can do, insider risk being one of those. But if you look at just the standard Purview, we'll call it, and think of having the information protection to where you can have data loss prevention policies and being able to do sensitivity classification. When you're looking at having, really just the Purview, that's the underlying component of like your E3, like your Office 365 E3. Now, where you really get, more security governance and compliance is as you move up the stack, right? And you get to E5, and now you can do the insider risk management and being able to look at natural language prompts and if there's injections around, concerns when somebody, might have something that they shouldn't be looking for, quite honestly. If they're typing in prompts that would cause a risk, now you can get alerted to that and set that up, as well as having more dashboards for those, more reporting. So the funny thing about Microsoft, right, is they have great marketing. Is like, hey, wow, look at all this that you can do. But they don't tell you it's like, hey, in order to configure this correctly to your organizational needs, it takes a lot more time, implementation. It really comes down to almost being in the same realm of migration, right? You're changing all of your policies and settings, and that really takes a lot just going through, hey, these are the capabilities, and it's next is like, how do we fine tune this? So even with Purview, right, if you have your data sources, right, and we always look at, hey, how clean is the data? What are you doing around, retention policies? How are you getting rid of stale information? Most importantly, when you're using, when you're using those Microsoft 365 Copilot, you have stale information out there. It's going to pull in that information, which could cause in the hallucinations and getting inaccuracy and having users that don't trust it. And that's where Microsoft comes in as well, is like, hey, how do we work on the change adoption? Getting users more familiar with like, hey, you have these tools out there. How can we help you to use them and, how you would use your daily work? And that's the adoption curve, it's quite specifically is really around, where you return on, get that ROI, the return on the investment for what you're investing on the Copilot 365 platform after you get the governance security risks out of the way so that users are using it to its full capabilities. And that's the biggest key there is like, hey, a lot of users may not use as much, or they may have a system in place, right? We all get guarded of like, I'm accustomed to using my Outlook. I like it in this profile of changing. And once you get users that accept the change and can see it, then that's where you truly get a lot more value. You get them more involved in sharing, what they're learning. But then, you see more and more of that return on investment and having that circle of excellence and that capability there.
So we'll go back to the Copilot thing in a second, because I got a license question for you around that one. I also have a question for you on the E5 thing, because I know, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But Microsoft Teams.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a decoupling of licenses this year due to some kind of a policy.
Regulation.
Right, some kind of a regulation. Maybe you can explain the regulation one more time, and then maybe talk about any changes, anything, any caveats that a Microsoft customer needs to think about with Teams going into 2026. Did anything change there? Because that was a big one, dude. Like
it was, yeah.
A lot of customers were like, come on, man.
I would call it a disruptor, quite frankly, where we ran into that several times where we have clients, hey, I want to move over to you. I have Teams bundled with my licensing. I'm using Teams. And quite frankly, I don't want to pay separately for a Teams license, and really it led to, some EU regulations that were passed in the EU region where Microsoft was forced to couple it, we'll call it. And it was only for that region, but they also found like, hey, we're going to do this worldwide. So to have more standardization around what they were doing. So for a long time, as they were going through this regulation, they had a process that you could technically upgrade to include Teams, but it wasn't an easy process, right? And they knew it. And I think what it came down to is as they came to a resolution and negotiated, Microsoft's pretty good at negotiating on different things, that they were able to bring Teams back as a bundle. And as of November 1st, that's now an option, but they also have to offer without Teams. So there's a discounted price if you wanted to go to a bundle without Teams versus
Okay.
having the Teams bundle.
All right, I'm gonna try and unpack because I'm gonna look at it through the lens of a Microsoft customer. I was able to get things like Business Premium, Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 bundled with Teams a while ago. This regulation hit, and if I created a new subscription, right, I had to get the license that excluded Teams, the decoupled license, and I could add Teams on top of that if I wanted to.
Correct. Yeah.
So a lot of customers went and did that needed to. Now it sounds like that they've worked something out to where you can now bundle Business Premium E3, E5 with Teams again, right? On a net new subscription or renewal, whatever the case may be. What is the plan of attack, right? What's the strategy for taking everything they just did and switching it back to what it used to look like?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question because if you look at it, there was an added cost to have that separate Teams enterprise license that you would then add on to an E3, E5 user, things like that, if you had the decoupled licenses without Teams. So now I would really consider, when that renewal comes up, dropping the Teams enterprise license and then getting the full bundle with Teams would be the route to go in that case.
Because there's a cost savings.
Yeah. I mean, you'll probably be about 10%, 10, 15% by bundling it together versus doing the separate add-on.
And no loss or gains of features.
Nope, they're all the same.
Okay.
So Teams is the base license, and then of course you look at Teams Premium, having more branding, as well as looking at the company branding and having the recap AI notes. So that's a big misconception is that, hey, in order to get those recap AI notes, they're really cool. Having a call and I have to take notes all the time. We all enjoy that. To where a lot of times clients think, hey, I need a Microsoft 365 Copilot to get that feature. And having a conversation with us as we unpack is, okay, there are advantages, of course, going to Copilot 365 and having that license. However, if your users are only looking for those AI-generated summary recap notes, Teams Premium will be a more cost-effective solution in that case to add on the license and have that as a starting AI point, using Copilot Chat, the web version, getting them more accustomed to it before, and then I would say graduating to Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Right. So for AI features within Teams, there's a tweener, right? There's something that's in between all of that, and there's probably not a lot of awareness.
There isn't. Yeah. Some of them look at it as like, hey, Teams Premium is all I need, and they don't have that base Teams license. And they're like, hey, this isn't working. It's like, you're right. It's an add-on. So it's the step up of having that upgrade license that's important. So Teams looking at as the underlying base license included with most subscriptions, but Microsoft did, kind of introduce a lot of confusion when they had to unravel and have the options without Teams, which are still that way today.
Amazing. Okay. So the Copilot. Now I know you were talking a lot about this earlier this year, and I'm not sure if the promotion is still in place, but I remember seeing or at least reading, and I know we've explained this to clients, that Copilot adoption we think is going to be a thing going into 2026. Microsoft hopes that it's a thing going into 2026. And one of the things they offered to customers as an incentive was additional discount for a net new subscription that included Copilot licensing. Not included, had Copilot licensing, and they could yield a discount. My understanding is the minimum license quantity was 10, right?
Correct.
And I don't know if that promotion's still in place. Is it between now and the end of the year? Is it between now and next year? Do they extend it? Will they extend it? What are the rules of Copilot license provisioning right now for cost savings?
Yeah, when you talk about it, it's like this one has progressed and changed quite a bit with Microsoft, even starting last year of having that promotional discount. And they did have, 15% off for your Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses, just add them. And as long as it's minimum quantity of 10 up to 2,400, then you would get the discount. Now, moving forward, starting October 1st, that's where they have still the promotion. However, you can't have any Copilot 365 licenses deployed at any time in order to qualify for the promotion. It is still there. You still get the 15% for, up to 1 year of a renewal when you look at it as far as a 1-year term. And then that would be good for a minimum of 10 licenses up to 2,400 in that case.
Up to 2,400.
Mhm.
Great caveat, right? Because we're talking about 2,400, and this number 2,400 comes up in a lot of areas, especially in the world of enterprise agreements. So let's just pivot over to EAs, because there have been a lot of announcements and some confusion around enterprise agreements and what enterprise agreement customers have to think about. And I think this all goes back to this big, massive general rumor that was created that EAs are going away.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, hang on, they're not going away. There's going to be some modifications to certain customer types depending on the number of users they have.
Right.
And we have seen, like in the past year and a half, 2 years, this gradual kind of evolution of Microsoft. What I see is Microsoft sort of disengaging from these larger EA customers, right? And not telling them to go to CSP, maybe in some cases they are, but basically telling them that, hey, CSP is probably might be an option for you to consider, and pushing that license agreement, the responsibility of the license agreement, the responsibility to support the customer for that license agreement down to the CSP, the partner community, okay? So maybe you could summarize what I just said, because it's not all EAs that are going away, but there's definitely something coming here. Maybe you talk about the pricing relevel and all this stuff and the emails that might be going out to these EA customers.
Yeah, you look at the EA is going to be one of the biggest disruptors in what Microsoft has changed. And it's really a philosophy change when you think about it. In the past, it used to be like, hey, if I get an EA, I'm going to have the best service support, best pricing, that really leading the conversation to whereas now there's more price parity. So that's what Microsoft is really eliminating is the discounts that you would get under an EA. And they are really pushing or looking at persuading clients to go more to a cloud solution provider like MicroAge for better support and service. That what Microsoft has seen is a better engagement style, having a partner that supports them from a Microsoft perspective for not only the licensing, but also from the resource perspective, right? Working with Microsoft on their behalf to look at obtaining, project funding or looking at client objectives on where we can bring in those things. So what Microsoft has now done is it's almost like an invite only program. And I would consider this for your really high enterprise levels of 50,000 users or higher that would qualify then for the EA, or 15,000 users or more, I should say. But even still, it's worth comparing the benefits, not only price alone, but we've also heard, EAs have been very transactional, right? Clients aren't really getting the additional objectives or meeting the objectives of what they were hoping to get from Microsoft. So this allows partners to really work with those larger clients and being able to help, them pivot into a CSP, which is a very easy, seamless transition that we've done with our past clients coming off of an EA. So anytime November 1st is really when it goes into effect, but where clients under EAs today need to be concerned is when that final renewal date is on the 3-year agreement, because that's where, it's going to be looked at as like, hey, let's do a comparison, see if CSP is better than continuing under an EA, knowing that, hey, we're going to lose some discounting if we continue that path, but also, hey, there may be a lot larger opportunities, and look at, the partner perspective of where we are at today and having the flexibility working with MicroAge. So we're not rigid. We come in knowing clients are in different walks of life when it comes to Microsoft, different areas of expertise. And we look at, okay, where do you need the most help, or where are your challenges, and where can we come in with the right resources at the time that you need them? And let's create more of a longer term partnership in alignment of, meeting their initiatives and expectations around Microsoft services in general. That leads a lot of conversations even to the Azure side, which, a lot of times it gets left aside and we focus so much on Microsoft licensing versus there's so much that you can do within Azure, and taking advantage of those gives you really the keys to the data center. So it's like, all right, and it's a different methodology, right? I think it's coming back, and you look at how much we've invested in time of coming up with the right team to deliver, what meets more of the objectives of what clients are looking for. But I look at it as Hey, when you're going into, and the best way that you can kind of relate it is if you're going into a sports game and you're a coach of the team, right? You may know how to play the game, right? Baseball, you pick up a bat, swing it at a ball, and you hit it into the field. However, when you look at from a coaching standpoint, the more time that you spend when you're developing a game plan and a strategy and things like that get overlooked when we talk about Azure because Microsoft makes it so easy of like provision up a subscription. We'll give you $200 and fire away, do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where it's going. And I'm picking up my bat and where's the ball and swinging away versus, hey, there's another team that we're against. So that's where, our methodology is really focused in heavily around let's create a better plan and strategy for you moving forward that we come in, help provide, design documentation, architecture, understanding what the current environment is, and let's find out too how you can use those platform services to reduce on costs, and then bringing in, our team to really help develop that plan with the client's team to prepare that technical documentation and getting all the ducks in a row before we actually migrate things to Azure. And even if you are in Azure today, I mean, one of our biggest efforts that we've had is just on the discovery and optimization. Now that you're in Azure, did you align to CAF? Do you follow the cloud adoption framework to get that so that you can get the best efficiencies and grow and scale in a way that does align to that framework? And that's where the services that we offer, we always focus on, okay, where is the client at in that journey with Azure and how can we come in and bring the right services to help them move forward?
So you talked about two different things. You talked about EAs and you talked about Azure, but you didn't really talk about two different things because it all ties together. It boils down to the partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we are back to the partner and the value of the partner. But going back to your EA thing. So if I start an EA on October 31st of 2025, I am subject to the, let's call it the old EA model, right? I get my level D discount and I can have it for 3 years.
Yep.
But if my EA renews on November 2nd of 2025, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's after November 1st, I am subject to the price parity. So if I'm an EA customer, I really need to think about and even ask Microsoft or ask my EA partner, hey, is this coming? And is this something I need to think about? And then you talked about the value of the partner. Because I think, a lot of people are like disgruntled about the EA changes, but the truth is there's a lot of value in having a good Microsoft partner. Like a really knowledgeable Microsoft partner is gold, right? And that's something I know you and the rest of the team and we have taken pride in for years now, right? We want to be the first ones to know. We want to be the first ones to inform, and I think we've done a really good job of that. Now you're talking about Azure, and that's really where the partner thing comes into play. Because if you're an EA customer, or if you're a CSP customer and your renewal's upcoming and you're looking to evaluate what's out there, don't just think about the transactional licensing, right? Don't just think about the purchase or the renewal or the cost. There's all this stuff that you really should vet the partner for, right? And I think that's why you brought Azure into the mix, because that's really the next frontier for any M365 customer, especially now that we're talking about AI and all these other things that they're going to be doing with Power Platform, and you get in some of the more complex solutions and you get into the data engineering associated with Microsoft. Azure ties very closely to that stuff. So you need to make sure that you've got a kind of a holistic level of expertise, right, from your partner. Do you have additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, everything that you explained really aligns to and you use the word, exactly how Microsoft would use that frontier customer. Like, what's going to be the next evolution, right? We're in an evolutionary change around AI as being that disruptor. And how are we going to, number one, accept AI, but how are you going to use it efficiently? And going back to the EAs, you're right. After November 1st, when that comes up, it's typically, where clients will know is Microsoft will reach out and say, hey, you're no longer qualified to have the EA enterprise agreement as it stands today. Here are some options, looking at alternatives. Really, you look at it, there's 500,000 other partners like us. So why MicroAge? Would be the question if I was, in an IT director's seat and evaluating them. Is price, being a factor, of course, but what is their area of expertise? How have they proven themselves? And you look at everything that we've gone to developing our practice over the years, and we've really involved, okay, let's have the right people. Number one, that can deliver, what the expectations are, where are the areas that clients we find that are most challenged by, proven the skills, getting the certifications and meeting the Microsoft requirements to have those solution partner designations across everything that Microsoft offers, very key there. I look at it too is like, how are you going to use those, right? It's one thing having them, but what does that do for you? What does that unlock? And a lot of clients don't realize is like, hey, if I'm going and looking at deploying Fabric and I have a partner like MicroAge, or what are they going to do for me that's going to help on that? Where, we have the ability to get Azure consumed revenue credits, things like that to help on the projects, as well as if there's project efforts involved where we can get additional funding from Microsoft in certain scenarios to where we can help fund a project and reduce the costs that way. But more importantly, is long-term efforts, right? Because it's always going back to, fine tuning, evolving what you're doing in Azure and making sure that's set up right to set up for success, on what the objectives there are. And that's where, we come in, proving ourselves with Microsoft, going through an audit to have that Azure infrastructure and migration specialization, which elevates, us as a partner that not every other partner has out there. And that's part of it, is not only achieving that, but utilizing that to the best strategy, right? Of what, a client's looking to do in Azure, that we can bring that in, whether it's creating Foundry, of course, our Octum practice, bringing that in and really having that consultation effort is providing, that additional value that MicroAge offers from our methodology that you won't find with a lot of other partners.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot today. Do you have a summary of, what to look for? What does Microsoft want in 2026? You know what I mean? Because again, the partners have to understand that, and then they have to figure out how to communicate that to a customer, and then do what's best for the customer, right? That's in it in a nutshell for me. What are your thoughts on 2026?
Yeah, 2026, I mean, will still continue to pursue, like, how do we get more 365 Copilot adoption? And that's really one of their main targets. And from a partner perspective, they want to understand is like, okay, what are you doing around that? How are you communicating this to your clients? How involved are you in, what our initiatives are? And we take, the approach too is like, hey, this may be important to, clients out there, and bringing them the information, helping them to evaluate it, but not necessarily saying, hey, you have to do this, right? I think in any portion of business, right, you got to objectify as like, hey, what's the best decision for us? And we've always been that way, from a consultative approach with our clients, is understanding what they're trying to accomplish and where it makes the most sense, where their budgeting lies, and, how we can help fulfill that as a partner versus, hey, here's the latest and greatest thing that we can sell you.
Yeah.
And I look at, longer term, right? The AI, what Microsoft's doing is definitely going to be a trajectory there, building agents, apps, looking at app source and what you can do. And they've really done a lot around the security front. So that's going to be, I look at it, there's three initiatives, right? You have your AI initiatives that Microsoft has, whether you're creating them in Copilot Studio using Azure Foundry. The next one really being security. There's that security foundation initiative that has definitely put Microsoft in really a true security realm. When you look at the capabilities of Security Copilot, now you can ask a natural language prompt that will go over your Entra ID configurations, risky users that are out there, helping you run KQL, the Custo query language searches and things like that around security incidents, and helping you prepare and diagnose those. So I think we'll see a lot more focus around, hey, how do we use Security Copilot, but how do we use it in a cost-effective way that we can come in as a partner and help analyze that and what the usage would look like. The last one for Microsoft that I see as an issue is Azure, right? It's still going back Azure Foundry. It's looking at, hey, let's move your data to Fabric so you get better analytical results out of that. You can do, your ETL transformations, connecting the notebooks and being able to really create that medallion approach of having the raw data. And once you have that data source and all of your information lies there, it's a lot easier to manage and have better accuracy around what you're going to get out of it. So those three initiatives I can see from Microsoft and from what they've told us as a partner is going to be, their main focuses as well.